Hi everybody, today we are making something super cool. I have been wanting to try to make this recipe for a long time. So I have seen a few people make tres leches cake covered in fondant, and I wanted to find out for myself if that was possible. So today I am going to make a white chocolate peppermint tres leches fondant cake. That was a mouthful. In today's video, I will be using the limited edition Peppermint Mocha Fondant by Satin Ice. They were kind enough to send me the fondant to try it out, and this is what I came up with, so let's start with the video. For the base of our cake, I am going to be using my basic vanilla cake recipe. Here are some of the ingredients, and we have sugar, unsalted room temperature butter. I have salt, baking powder and baking soda, all-purpose flour, large eggs, and whole milk. Before we move on, I do want to let you know that this is not a traditional tres leches base. It's usually a sponge cake, but since we are covering this in fondant, I do want it to be a little bit sturdier, so we are using a butter cake. In addition to those ingredients, I will also be using 1 box of white chocolate instant pudding mix. The first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure to beat our butter very well. Once our butter is very well beaten, we are going to go ahead and add in our granulated sugar. Once my granulated sugar and my butter are a little bit incorporated, I'm going to go ahead and add my eggs one at a time. Make sure to incorporate the eggs very well into your sugar and butter mixture, and we're going to go ahead and beat this mixture for approximately 5 minutes to make sure that it ends up being fluffy but also pasty at the same time. In the meantime, we are going to go ahead and mix all of our dry ingredients, and here I have my all-purpose flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt, and I'm also going to add in the box of instant pudding mix to this bowl. Make sure to whisk all of the ingredients lightly to make sure that they are all well incorporated. Now I'm going to go ahead and incorporate all of my wet ingredients, and here I have my favorite vanilla. It is called La Vencedora. You can find this on Amazon, and I'm going to go ahead and add my vanilla into my milk. Now it's time to incorporate all of the mixtures. I'm going to go ahead and add about 1/3 of the dry mixture into my butter and sugar mixture. And then I'm also going to go ahead and add half of the milk mixture into this bowl. I'm going to continue adding my ingredients in this same order. So I'm going to mix this, then add another 1/3 of my flour mixture, and then the remaining half of my wet ingredients, give it a mix, and then finally add the remaining flour mixture into this bowl. This is the consistency that your batter should have. It should be thick, and if you see a little bit of bumps, don't worry, that is totally fine. Now I'm going to separate my batter into 3 8-inch pans, and I did go ahead and spray them with nonstick spray, and I am going to bake my batter at 350 degrees between 28 to 30 minutes. Now we are going to make our 3 milks, and I am going to be using equal parts of all of these milks. I do have half and half. I have sweetened condensed milk, and I also have evaporated milk, and I will be using my La Vencedora vanilla extract. Now I'm going to pour in half a cup of sweetened condensed milk, half a cup of evaporated milk, and half a cup of half and half. When you are done pouring in all the milks, you should have 1.5 cups of this milk mixture. And now I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Once you have all of your ingredients in this little bowl, make sure to whisk it very, very well to incorporate all the 3 milks and the vanilla flavor. This is how your milk should look, and then here are the cakes out of the oven. Just make sure to go ahead and level them so that they can be even. Now what we are going to do is we're going to evenly spread out this milk mixture into our 3 cake layers. Remember that each cake layer should have at least half a cup of this mixture. For this video, I just went ahead and eyeballed it. Also, another important thing to remember is to line your cake pans with a little bit of food wrapping plastic. This is to ensure that any of the liquids that are down at the bottom of our pans get absorbed into the bottom of our cake layers. Another reason why this saran wrap or plastic wrap is important is to make sure that once you are done moistening all your cakes, you are able to wrap each cake layer by itself into this pan. This is going to help to retain the moisture, and it's what's going to make our cake wet like the Tres Leches cake should be. I'm also going to prepare some ganache so I can make sure to cover the edges of my cakes. This is what's going to make our cake more stable, and it's going to help maintain stability and keep all of the filling inside of our cake. Since we are making a Tres Leches cake with fondant, I will leave the link to my chocolate ganache recipe in the description box and in a little card up here on the top right corner. For our buttercream, I am going to use peppermints in the buttercream to flavor it. And here I did go ahead and crush a little bit of these peppermints. It is very hard, so if you can find this crushed peppermint, I recommend going that route instead of this, because as you can see here, I did have to fish out a few of the peppermints that remained whole once I placed them into this little measuring cup. To begin the actual part of our buttercream, I do have 8 ounces of cream cheese and 1/4 cup of powdered sugar here. I'm going to go ahead and whip this up and make sure that both of these ingredients incorporate. For my liquid, I am adding in heavy whipping cream. I will be using 4 tablespoons, but you can also use less or you can use more depending on how liquidy or how squishy you want your filling to be. For powdered sugar, I am adding in 3 cups. I did go ahead and add these 3 cups of powdered sugar gradually to make sure that I was able to incorporate the powdered sugar into the rest of the mixture each time that I added it. After adding the 3 cups of powdered sugar, your mixture should look a little bit like this. It's going to resemble marshmallow fluff, and what I'm going to go ahead and do next, once I'm done adding in the powdered sugar, is I am going to go ahead and add in my peppermints that I do have set aside in a measuring cup, and I did go ahead and also chop a little bit of these white chocolate chips so that I can add flavor and crunch to my filling. I also want to remind you that if you do have big chunks or big pieces of peppermint, be sure to remove those. You don't want anybody breaking a tooth while they're biting onto your delicious cake. And now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take a spatula and I'm going to fold in all of these ingredients. I wanted to give this filling an extra bit of spice or color, so I did go ahead and add 1 drop of this pink color to give it more of a festive look. As you can see here, it has been a whole day and I did let my cake tiers rest for 24 hours in the refrigerator. And here I'm just doing a small test to make sure that all the milk was absorbed, and as you can see, it was. So now I'm going to begin to assemble my cakes. And what I like to do is I like to place a small dollop of ganache on my board just to make sure that my cake is secure. So I'm just going to go ahead and begin by placing my first tier right in the middle of my board, and then I'm going to show you the top view just so you can see how spongy and absorbent it is to the 3 milks mixture. What I'm doing here is I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of ganache on the side to prevent my filling from spilling out. Now my ganache hadn't finished setting, so that's why you'll notice that it's a little bit runny. But if you make yours 1 day ahead of time, it should have enough time to set. For the filling, make sure not to overfill. Remember that we will be placing fondant over this cake, and also remember that it does have 3 milks absorbed into the actual cake itself, so we don't want anything to spill out once we cover our cake with ganache entirely. You also want to make sure to make your layers as even and as smooth as possible to prevent any air pockets, and also to make sure that your cake remains stable throughout the stacking process. Usually for measure, a good amount of filling to cake ratio is about 1/4 to 1/2 of a cup of filling. It can definitely be more, it can definitely be less, but in this case, we want to make sure that none of this spills out, so I did go ahead and remove the excess. Now that I have all 3 of my cake tiers stacked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure to seal my entire cake with ganache. And like I said, you will see in a moment, but what happened is that my ganache hadn't finished setting yet, so it is a little bit runny. And also I did use 2 different brands of cake pans, so one of my cake tiers was slightly smaller than the rest. To help my cake set, I did place it into the refrigerator, and this is how it looked once I was done placing the entire layer of ganache. For my fondant, I do have some CMC powder. I also have some cornstarch. I will also be using some vegetable shortening, and of course I do have my satin ice peppermint mocha fondant, and these are all the things that I will be using to prepare my fondant to roll out and place on top of my cake. So to begin, what I like to do is I like to place about 1/4 of a teaspoon to about 2 small packages of fondant, and I did apply 1 teaspoon of vegetable shortening, and this is just to ensure that my fondant doesn't break or doesn't break as easily as it would without adding these ingredients as I'm rolling it and as I'm placing it onto my cake layers. In this part, my cake was cold, so I did not have to add anything else to attach my fondant onto my cake, but you do have to work pretty fast in order to avoid any tearing or any elephant skin. For decoration on the bottom, I did use leftover filling, and I also added a little bit of this crushed up peppermint to decorate the bottom and the edge of my cake. And then using a Wilton tip, I did go ahead and add a few rosettes at the top and some peppermint just to make sure that this cake looked as festive and matched the taste of my fondant perfectly. And here is the final result of how my cake looks on the inside. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Definitely let me know in the comments below what you think about this recipe. I promise you the taste sounds a little bit funny, but it did turn out to taste very, very good. So definitely let me know if you try it out in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!